We talk about the LA Kings season so far, a little bit past the halfway mark of the season, with longtime TV analyst Jim Fox on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the last 18 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. The Kings close out a mini two-game homestand tonight in what suddenly feels like a very important game as they host the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. Here to talk about that and more is Kings longtime TV analyst and former right winger, the great Jim Fox. Hey, Jim, how are you?
Eddie, doing great. Thank you very much for having me again. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. I know on a bit of short notice as well, so that's very much appreciated. Last time you were with us was in November, about the quarter mark of the season, and you said, and I'll quote you, "So far, so good," when talking about the Kings. And I think you said you thought maybe they were a little bit better as far as wins and points at that point in the season. Now we're just over the halfway point of the season for the Kings. How would you say you feel now about what we've seen over the halfway part of the season?
You know, if we could take out the last two games, but even including those games, I would say overall, and I've mentioned it a couple of times, and when you talk to fans and you talk to coaches, you talk to players, the one thing they're looking for, a couple of things they're looking for energy, they're looking for effort. I think that's a given, but they're looking for consistency. And I think the Kings have been one of the most consistent teams this year. So I think they've given everything they possibly can. I think they've played some real strong games of late. I'm talking the last 3-week period or so. And, you know, just the thing that comes to mind to me is the 1-0 loss in Edmonton, where that was a real good game. You lose the game, but you play very well. And I think that's the way, for the most part, it's gone for the Kings. They maintain a very consistent level.
You have talked, though, about the last few games. They have lost 4 of 5. Over those 4 losses, 4 total goals scored. And then the last couple of games, they've allowed 9 goals, which certainly is not characteristic. Anything in particular from these last couple of games that they've kind of gotten away from, would you say?
Well, Eddie, I'll be honest. I mean, the last game is something that was expected, certainly by me. We're all human beings, regardless of what it says on your paycheck. Emotions get the better part of people sometime. And I think, generally speaking, the numbers will tell you, coming back home after a long road trip, the first game back is very difficult. And then, of course, our minds are not necessarily 100% on hockey right now, with everything that's going around Los Angeles with the fires and the first responders and everyone doing their job. So I mentioned it the other night on the telecast. I'm sure there's some people out there that say that's an excuse. I say it's a reason, and at least that's the last game. That's where I think it showed the most, coming back home after the trip. The game in Seattle, if there is a commonality between the last two games, it's the start. The start has not been strong, but again, we're talking 2 games, and I hope it doesn't continue. If you want to talk about the entire season, I would say the starts of the Kings are as good as anyone. So that's been the issue. The drop in offense is certainly, the numbers prove that. It's a concern. Again, I mentioned it already, 1-0 loss in Edmonton, previously a 2-1 loss in Calgary. I thought the Kings played very well in those games. But yeah, the drop-off in offense is concerning because this team is known for defense. And sometimes you can play solid defense, but of course, you need some run support too.
No doubt. You mentioned the consistency of the Kings. They've only lost 3 in a row once this season, and that was early in the season. But there's the potential for that tonight. Tough opponent tonight. Florida Panthers obviously speaks for themselves, defending champs. 28-17-3, second in the Atlantic, one of the top teams in the East. 59 points in 48 games. And on the road this year, 15-8-1. I know you're not on the call tonight, but your thoughts on this game tonight and the challenge the Kings have tonight?
It is a challenge, and the streaks and your numbers, and to me, it's unfortunately I still take the players' attitude of What happened in the past, okay, learn, and it's the next game. But I think with Florida, and I did mention it after the last game, I think, of course, because they're defending Stanley Cup champions, there's going to be a little extra incentive there for the Kings. They had the lull the last couple, but I think that that's going to catch your attention. Florida is a team that doesn't have many holes. Of course, they had some players leave them as free agents because of salary cap issues. That's what happens when you win a Stanley Cup. But when you look down their lineup, that's something I think the Kings are trying to be. They're trying to be 4 lines deep. You know, actually Jim plays 7-11 many times, only 11 forwards. So, but they really rely. He mixes guys in. He's not looking to load up one line or the other. I think Florida has that same philosophy, and I think that's something the Kings want to make sure they incorporate into their game. So Florida's big, they're strong, they're edgy, and that's something, Eddie, I think too, that the Kings, you know, they want to be a little bit more of that this year. I think they have, and if there's any test, it would probably be against the Florida Panthers because they are known as that type of team that can really grind you.
Looks like we're going to see some lineup changes tonight. Maybe not all that surprising, judging by the last couple of games. You know, like to change things up a bit. Not sure if the Kings will stick with the 11-7 setup, but it looks like Akil Thomas apparently is going to draw into the lineup with Philip Deneau and Kevin Fiala up front. And then on the back end, Brant Clark apparently be paired with Jacob Moerara and Jordan Spence alongside Joel Edmondson. Any thoughts on those changes for tonight?
I can just give you, first of all, what Jim Hiller said. He said that with the pairings back on the blue line, he said that Brant Clark has been fine this year, but he's had a little dip in his game, and it's time for him maybe to pull back a little bit of ice time. He's still going to be playing, still in the lineup, but pull back a little bit of ice time. And I think that's where the 7D can help you because you can, you know, mix and match and plug in and plug out, those types of guys. Up front, yeah, Akil, you're looking for something different. Akil, when he's on his game, you know, he can bring a little bit more of that energy type of style that maybe the Kings would be lacking right now with all the emotions that they have to go through. But I think now it's time. It is a reset time. And I think Jim Hiller sees it the same way. And I think more than anything, I think he's taking these little changes to the lineup to reset the group. A lot of times when you change combinations or pairings, it becomes more about how you play and not who you're playing with. And I think coaches try to focus on that, make sure your system is being played. And that might be another focus point that Jim Hiller's looking for when you're changing up the lineup a little bit.
You talked about it, the 11 forwards and the 7 defense. We've seen a lot of it this season. It's been very successful for the Kings. A few other teams have done it. We've seen Edmonton do it a little bit as well, but not the norm in the NHL. I was wondering if you thought, why don't other teams use this? Why is it working for the Kings? And is there any downside to it if you use it for an entire season?
I think that Jim Hiller himself has that philosophy. I think when he first came up and joined the Kings last year as the head coach, there was a lot of 12-6, the regular formation. You know, 4 regular forward lines of 3 guys, 3 pairs of D, normal. But out of power plays and penalty kills, Jim Hill, in the back of his mind, he never wants someone sitting on the bench too long. He wants you engaged in the game. He wants your legs going. He wants you to be right on top of things. And so he would move around lines and change combinations coming out of power plays and penalty kills because some guys don't play those special team situations, just to make sure your legs are there. And I think he takes the same type of philosophy into 11-7. As a forward, you absolutely love it. You love it because you're playing, you're getting out there. There are certain times then when the coach can really drop down, he can really shorten the bench near the end of a game. The 7D, that's more of a struggle, I think. That's more of an issue. That's where the one guy usually gets left out a little bit. For instance, so with a Brant Clark, you know, he can be spotted in power play duty and maybe sat out a little bit more. Kyle Burroughs has been the number 7 guy basically all season long. That's a difficult situation to be in. It's difficult on the coaching staff to make sure the rotation is working and getting everyone and staying involved. I know there's probably concern over 82 games about fatigue up front. I really don't see it that way. I really don't. I think that as a forward, you're usually looking for more ice time than less ice time, and the 11-7 helps you out there.
All right, we're going to have more with Jim Fox on what we've seen so far from the LA Kings. We'll do that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. The Stanley Cup Final, the Super Bowl, the Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing, teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safe. SelectQuote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. Other life insurance brokers offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more and cover you less, while SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents work with you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. Go to selectquote.com/lockedonnhl today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedonnhl. We continue with Kings longtime TV analyst Jim Fox. And Jim, I want to talk to you about some individual players, but real quick, one issue on a team-wide level for the Kings that's been an issue all year long has been the power play. And I get fan feedback every Friday on the shows that we do, and I get a lot of questions. Why hasn't it been better? And people have brought up the lack of a right-handed shot amongst the forwards on the power play. Is that big of a factor as to why it's been an issue for the Kings? And if so, maybe you could explain why that is an issue.
Well, I think that, again, Jim Hiller's philosophy, at least previously, was that it was very important to have a right-handed man in certain positions. The reason it's important is because it opens up different angles, passing lanes. That as a lefty, you have to shift your body around. As a lefty, the defenders might be able to get their stick on the puck a little bit better because you can't shield it as much as if you were a right-hand guy. So it depends, of course, which alignment the coach is looking for. But yeah, I think it is a point well taken. And they haven't been able to, at least so far, incorporate that right-handed guy in there. Alex Laferriere would have been that guy. He started the season that way. It wasn't working. They moved them off there. I think it is an issue. But if you don't have it, you don't have it working. You got to find something else. The other thing I think that is different than last year when it was pretty good, it was in the middle of the pack, it was not bad at all, was that Quinton Byfield was used as a front net man the most. He just, basically his job was to be front net. He's still there at certain times, but I don't see it as much as a priority to make sure he's there for screens and tips and rebounds, but also puck recovery into the corner. He's very quick, right? Big man, he can get into the corner quick and get the puck back for you after you had a chance and it didn't end up in the net. So those are a couple of things we're looking at. The other thing, last year they said they went away from Adrian Kempe as the one-time shooter because they felt other teams were overplaying situations on the penalty kill and taking away that shot. So they said, if they're going to take it away so much, we got to go somewhere else. Well, in the last game, we saw Adrian Kempe. He rang one off the crossbar, then right away. I think they should just nail that into the ground. Keep going on that until it's absolutely impossible to get the one-time shot off. I think the philosophy there is not anything new to anyone, but it is this: make the other team take something away from you. And they felt it happened last year, so they went, but make other teams now take away that shot. Keep hammering it. I think that would be the way to go. They've had some issues. They've had some issues on entries, which used to be the strongest part on the Kings power play, getting into the zone. And maybe that's the way I think you correct things more than anything else. Wouldn't be surprised to see an old-fashioned, the guy who's getting to the offensive blue line with speed, chip and chase himself, go after it himself instead of looking for these pretty entry zones or entries into the zone, because right now those aren't working.
You mentioned Quinton Byfield, always a topic of conversation. Obviously, a lot expected, understandably so. Started slow, but we did see a real nice stretch of games from him in late December. It's given us some glimpses of what possibly he can show, just needs to kind of put it together more consistently. Are you seeing signs? And I know it's not always all about numbers with every player, but are you seeing signs of progress? Are you seeing things to be encouraged about as the season has gone along with Q?
Yeah, first of all, I think that when you evaluate a player, and I know Jim Hiller brings this up all the time, it's not always about the numbers you're saying. And then I say, but he was second overall. He was selected to provide offensive production. And right now he has not hit the areas and the ceilings that everyone hoped. I think, as you mentioned, we've seen the ability. We've seen it there. I think recently, especially during this consistent streak for the Kings, Quinton Byfield, coach's decision has been placed into a shutdown role maybe for the first time in his career. The freshest thing that comes to mind to me was the game on the road at the last road trip to start the road trip in Winnipeg, where he was out there against Mark Scheifele just about every shift, did a phenomenal job. The Kings win a big game on the road. So there's maybe shifting responsibilities. Having said that, there are times when Quentin looks like he's locked in, and there's times when, to be honest, Quentin looks like he's going 100 miles an hour and not a lot is getting accomplished. So I think it's completely normal. I think it's another phase or stage that players go through to learn how to slow down the game sometimes. It's not always just 100 miles an hour. You kind of slow it down in certain areas. And, that's, if there's a great example of that, it is Leon Draisaitl. I mean, you have McDavid all over 1,000,000 miles an hour, then Draisaitl becomes more of a stronger, methodical type of approach. Don't want to compare Quentin to any of those guys, but I'm looking for styles. I'm looking to copy styles. And I think if Quentin could learn to just maybe slow it down a little bit, then I think there's more purpose that gets into his game.
Kevin Fiala's second on the team in goals, but he's also a player that a lot of times leaves you wanting more. I know Jim Hiller has talked about wanting him to shoot the puck more. Your thoughts on Kevin Fiala's season so far?
Always a guy, he's a lightning rod. He draws attention because he's so dynamic when he has the puck. And then, you're looking for better numbers. I know, Eddie, you're familiar with PDO. I think it's a measurement of your shooting percentage based on when you're attacking, and then your own goaltender save percentage. It works both ways. It's basically a number that's calculated that tells you when you're too far hot, you're so good, there's no way you can sustain it, or when you're down low, sooner or later, you're going to come back at least to the norm. Kevin Fiala, his numbers right there, his PDO is right down at the bottom of the league. I'm talking about bottom 350, way down there. So you would just expect normally that the production would increase, but based on the number of chances he gets. I don't disagree with the shoot more issue. I think the best example we saw was on the last road trip. And we broke it down, I hope, on a power play goal. It wasn't a normal power play. It was a rush goal, right? It ended up being a 2-on-1, which, you don't categorize that as a power play style type of goal.
Right.
He had Trevor Moore with him, and he got over the blue line 2-on-1. He was looking for Trevor. He's looking for Trevor. He wanted Trevor. Defenseman took it away. He was focused on Trevor, and then once he decided to focus on the shot, it was a complete turnaround, 100% commitment to the shot. It wasn't in between. It wasn't last second. I'm going to try. Focus on the pass. Not there. Flick the switch. Focus on the shot. He focused on the shot, took the shot, and scored. I think that's something that I assume he's taking a look at. Look at that example specifically to show commitment to a shot. I think the biggest reason Adrian Kempe has become the player he has is because he is committed to his shot. Meaning when he takes it, he's not looking for something else. He's not looking for something better. He realizes that at the end of the year, if you get 4 to 5 shots a night, you're going to score a lot of goals.
I did want to ask you, if you don't mind, real quick about a player who's not with the Kings anymore, was in the news recently. Arthur Kaliev put on waivers. The Rangers claimed him. He had a goal and a win Tuesday night. You're not the GM, you're not the head coach, but any thoughts on why it didn't work out for Artie in LA?
My thoughts are this. I think there's something that was going on that was not related to on ice. I don't know specifically. We know there were rumors about him asking for a trade and those types of things because he was not happy with his ice time. How far that went, how that was communicated, all of those types of things. That's where I'm leaning to the point where sometimes the fit is no longer there. And you can look at on ice and say, okay, he's good on the power play. He's got a great shot. He's got all this, all that. But sometimes for the mix of the group, it doesn't work. And I would lean to that. Can I give you specifics? No. That's something that happens between a player, an agent, a GM, or head coach, teammates. That's where it happens. I don't know that. I'm not in the locker room. I'm just giving you something to the point where when I looked at his game, I'm saying, okay, he's a decent player. Yeah, maybe he should be getting more ice time. He wasn't. And I assume there was an internal reason for that.
All right, up next, we're going to look at what's coming up for the Kings, another big road trip coming up. We'll do that next here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate with a variety of bets, keeping every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly, no waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some excitement for the playoffs, FanDuel has got you covered. We're down to the final four in the NFL. The Eagles are 6.5-point home favorites against the Commanders in the NFC title game. The Chiefs are a 1.5 favorite against the Bills in the AFC Championship game. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we're wrapping it up with former Kings right winger and longtime TV analyst Jim Fox, who I just happened to see this, Jim. I'm not trying to pump you up or anything, but I saw on your Wikipedia page, you had 65 goals and 166 points in your final year of junior hockey with the Ottawa 67s. That's amazing. I mean, those numbers are eye-popping.
You want to know what's even more amazing?
Yes.
My 65 goals were the least amount on my line. The centerman I played with,
Wow.
Sean Simpson, and the left winger, Yvan Joly, both had 66. So that's
a decent line.
That was a decent line. That was we were dominant. There was no question. Ottawa Sevens, Brian Kilray is the head coach, a Hockey Hall of Famer. Just one of those areas where offensively we were basically hard to stop. So yeah, it was. When you look back, of course, when I was drafted to the Kings, and yeah, my numbers in the NHL were okay, but they were certainly never came anywhere close to that type of stuff. But those were fun days, believe me.
I can only imagine. My goodness. And in any era of hockey, that's certainly impressive. So the Kings are going on another road trip, as you well know, got to pack the bags again. I mean, they started the year with the 7-game trip. They just wrapped up the 5-game roadie and now back for another 5-game road trip. Hopefully the Kings can take a W with him out on this latest trip. But this is a tough trip. You've got Columbus and Detroit, a couple of teams that are hungry and rejuvenated recently. The 2 Florida teams are always tough. And then Carolina's another Eastern Conference heavyweight. This looks like it could be one of the biggest challenges of the season coming up for the Kings.
Yeah, and I agree. I look at it. I look at those teams and how they're playing at the time, and you're right. The Detroit and Columbus, you start to trip. Both teams are playing pretty well right now. Columbus is sneaky offensively. They're like top 5 in offense in the league. At the same time, Eddie, again, I hate to be boring, but it's like I'm concerned about how the Kings are playing. You want to count, and we should count. They were losses in that 4 to 5 or whatever the numbers are. You can tell I don't even keep track of those types of things. But great game, I thought, in Calgary. Great game in Edmonton. Mm-hmm. I'm worried about how the Kings are playing. And so I'm looking to them get back to a consistent level. Because of the race in the West, yes, it is important to pick up points. It is important to get those wins on the board. But it is important for the Kings to get back to a little bit of what they maybe just slid off the last little while. And it's tough because the Kings played a hard, physical, energetic game. And sometimes I think if there's anything, Eddie, that maybe the offense has dropped off, and it's because you're expending so much energy in those areas. When you get the puck, you have the same amount. It's Jim Hiller believes in the concept of this. When you play tight, hardworking team defense, you always have a chance to win at the end of the night. You're in every game. And I think for the most part, the Kings have been doing that. So yeah, I agree with your assessment. When Tampa Bay came here, the Kings beat them. I thought Tampa Bay dominated the game. Florida, again, we played them twice in the next 3 or 4 games. But it's just about the Kings getting back to making sure. The one thing the Kings did very, very well, they don't make it easy on the opposition. Nothing is clean, especially in the defensive zone. If the other team's going to score, they have to go through 5 or 6 great plays in a row to make it happen. Kings have to get back to that and then go from there. But, the offensive balance has to come around again. The Byfields have to be there. The Fialas have to be there. The Trevor Moore has to pick his game up. Philippe Deneau and assist everyone. All those guys. Kempe and Kopitar, it seems like they're okay. LaFerriere, we'll see when he gets back in the lineup how quickly. But if there is anything right now, to me, it's just that offensive balance that they've got to get back to. So the other team has to worry about them. Warren Fogle had real good numbers early. Just kind of everyone's dropping off at the same time, and that has to get back up.
Final one for you, Jim. We haven't talked about him all season because he's been hurt, but Drew Doughty today out of the red non-contact jersey. He was in the normal white jersey practicing with the team. So obviously he's close. What does he mean to the Kings when he gets back in the lineup?
Well, I think, again, we were just talking earlier about, the Brandt Clark and the Jordan Spence, and, they're on the right side, and those guys are being kind of shuffled right now. With Drew, then it makes you make a decision, right? It's going to be probably Spence or Clark. With 7D dressed, you can have both. But I think Drew just allows you to get back into more of that. It really has an effect, domino effect, down through the pairs. I think the plan, I haven't really addressed it specifically with Jim Hiller, but I don't think the plan is for Drew to come back and be playing 20 minutes a night. Now, he normally plays 25, 26. But not even 20. I think the plan, especially with 7D again, you can do this, right? You can bring him back and play him 12, 14. See how it goes. See what's happening. See how it's feeling. And bring him back that way. Now, does that affect the rest of the team? Yes, it does. And that's where everyone mentally has to be prepared for a slight adjustment in their roles. And then a guy like Gavrikov, who's played outstanding. I've mentioned it a couple of times. I think you can make the argument for MVP of the team so far because he's had to change sides as a defenseman. He logs more minutes than anyone, and they're getting the job done. Right at the top of the league defensively, he gets a lot of credit. So now, will he be moved away from Mikey Anderson? Because that's where Drew Doughty probably is more comfortable. So I think everyone is keeping a close watch on the effect it has on the team. But once things settle in, Drew Doughty gives you a 25, 26-minute a night player. So that means the other team for half the game, it's going to be tough for them to score.
He is the great Jim Fox, normally on the call for the Kings games with Nick Nixon and Daryl Evans on the FanDuel Sports Network. Not tonight. The game will be on TNT tonight, but Jim and the crew will be on the call for this big upcoming road trip. We'll all be tuning in and watching. Jim, I did have a listener. I said, final question. I did have a listener ask, does Jim still do the wine thing? And if so, where can we find it? I know that's your big passion outside of hockey.
I do the wine thing, yes. Patinee Cellars. It's Patine, and then cellars like a wine cellar. So patineecellars.com. You can find all the information there. We're very proud of what's going on. We're basically started 2011 was our first vintage. So it's been a while now. Mostly Pinot Noir. But a couple of years ago, we introduced the Chardonnay. A couple of years ago, we introduced the Cabernet Sauvignon. So the critics love our wines. They give us high scores all the time. The people I talk to, of course, certainly enjoy them too. So very proud of that. I'm glad they asked. It is a very interesting. I mentioned it before, Eddie. I don't want to get too psychological, but when as an athlete, everything is about the final score. You're going to win or lose. Professional athlete, that's all that matters. Now, in wine, they do score your wines. They give you points, but it's more gray area. It's not as black and white. I think I come from an area where everything is black and white to this wine area, which is, it's more about art. It's more about preparation. It's more about style. It's more about your own feelings and how you want to develop and make and craft a wine. So I think that's what interested me, and I think it provides a really good balance for the black and white part, and maybe more of a gray area part.
All right, Jim. Well, have fun with that. I know you will. Have fun on this upcoming road trip. Safe travels with the rest of the crew, and looking forward to seeing you guys on the call on this important road trip. Thank you for doing this. You're always so generous with your time. Really appreciate it. I know Kings fans appreciate it as well, but thanks for doing this, and look forward to talking to you again later in the season.
All right, Eddie, my pleasure. I know you put me to work on my day off, but thanks for having me again.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that. All right, that was Jim Fox. I know you guys enjoyed that. Hey, for you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch Locked On LA Kings every day, Thursday show obviously will be a recap of the Kings-Panthers game, looking for a big win tonight. Friday will be another Kings fan feedback show. If you want to get in on that, the email address is lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE And if you're watching on YouTube, you can always post your comments in the comments section. And if you want to follow us on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram, we are at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you as always for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. And as always, go Kings go.